is still a rose by any other name, but is Islamophobia a rose by the name of anti-Muslim hostility? What is actually happening? Let's look at how this government has got into this position. It started with a request that the blasphemy laws should come back, and then Graham Stringer called for them not to. Let's look at what Graham had to say.
Can the Prime Minister ensure this House that there will be no introduction or reintroduction of a blasphemy law, either by statute, by judicial overreach, or by a non-statutory definition of Islamophobia?
Yes, I can give him that assurance, and it's important that I do so.
Well, is this another U-turn? Has Keir Starmer gone for Tahi Ali's view of the world?
Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
We are, as I said before, Mr. Speaker, committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including, of course, Islamophobia in all of its forms.
But this isn't necessarily the view of Nigel Farage, who didn't say it in the House of Commons, but went to say it to the American Congress.
Labour government now are intending to pass a law that has a definition of Islamophobia. They're intending to put that into law, and that effectively will mean that criticism of a religion, mocking of a religion, would become an offence. Finishing up kind of with two-tier law and two-tier justice.
Well, it's not quite as bad as Nigel is saying, and it's not fully what Tahi Ali is asking for. But equally, what has happened is interesting, that it's going to be guidance, it's not going to be law, and it's maintained that freedom of speech will not be affected. But what worries me is that when you get public bodies all having to follow a specific definition, all having to follow a view of what anti-Muslim hostility means, you get an enormous amount of self-censorship, and you get changes in behaviour. We were discussing last night on Martin Daubney's programme the Callacane issue, the murders that he committed in Nottingham, which came about in part because too many people of his race had already been sectioned, and therefore there was a reluctance to section him because it would have made the figures look bad. Once you've got this type of guidance, you have people looking over their shoulders at the figures, at the statistics, at the reports that come in, saying that there may be a problem when you may simply be applying the law equally to all. And the other point that must be remembered is that the ordinary law protects us all. The routine law protects us from not hate speech, but from acts of hate, from inspiring or causing or urging violence. We are all protected from that. And much though I think the Act should be repealed, protected characteristics, including religion, are covered by the Equality Act. So what more does this add other than an attempt to stifle freedom of speech?
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just living credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, You need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponise against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward. And that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
Particularly if you're converting to Rome, I should be delighted to hear it. mailmog@gbnews.com. Anyone who writes in saying they're converting to Rome, I will read out that mailmog. So I'm now joined by the founder and director of the Free Speech Union, Lord Young, and of course my panel, Kelvin McKenzie and Michael Crick. Toby, thank you for coming in. Are we being too precious? And isn't it reasonable that Muslims should be protected from hostility, which they probably do get a little bit more of than I do as a papist?
I don't think we are being alarmist about this. As you just said, there are plenty of protections in the law for Muslims and people of all faiths. The Equality Act, as you said, protects them from being discriminated against in virtue of their religious beliefs. There are various aggravators in the statutory hate crime framework which make hostility towards a person's religion an aggravated criminal offence. And of course it's against the law to stir up religious hatred under the Public Order Act.
But does the Free Speech Union support aggravated offences of this kind? No, you have suspicions about those.
I do.
So try and find out, how far would you go in rolling this back? You think this takes it a step too far? How far back can you reasonably go?
I would like to strip out the concept of hate crime from British law altogether. And I think that's an ambitious political aim, but I think it might be achievable under a different government, certainly not under this one, which has just introduced a whole slew of additional aggravators into the hate crime framework.
But isn't there a point that some people of different faiths, particularly in immigrant communities, so faiths that this country is less used to, get more bother, more hassle than people that belong to the Church of England?
Well, I don't think... I think the evidence showing that is not particularly definitive. But in addition, I don't think the way to decrease hostility towards Muslims, if there is hostility towards Muslims, is to roll out this definition of anti-Muslim hostility and appoint a czar to make sure it's observed. The impression that gives, I think, is that Muslims are enjoying additional legal protections that aren't enjoyed by people of other faiths. How will that go down in Leicester, for instance, where there is a bit of tension between Hindus and Muslims? Won't the Hindus think, well, where is the definition of anti-Hindu hostility? Where is the anti-Hindu hostilities are? So rather than allay community tensions and reduce hostility towards Muslims, I think the real danger is that this particular additional protection, layer of protection for Muslims, will increase hostility towards them.
But if I were on the left, wouldn't I say, well, then we need to extend this for Hindus. We should extend it to anybody who receives hate because of who they are, or perceived hate because of who they're perceived to be. Well, and that though you and I would recognise that being a Muslim is not a racial characteristic. We could convert to Islam if we wanted to. It's not a racially exclusive religion. People do assume that people of a certain race are Muslim, don't they?
Well, if they do, they're wrong. I mean, it's a fundamental precept of Islam that everyone is born a Muslim, no matter what your race. That's why they describe converts as reverts. Right. They're just reverting to their original state.
I was definitely born a Catholic. I'm not having this nonsense. I'm not born anything other than...
I think you're right. I think some people on the left will start clamouring for the same kinds of protections for all faiths, and the Free Speech Union is about to mount a legal challenge against Steve Reed, the Community Secretary, for embracing this definition and announcing he's going to appoint a czar to enforce it. We want to stop this from spreading across society. I mean, the idea that you increase social cohesion by providing every faith group with a definition of hostility and appointing a czar to police their neighbours to make sure they're not being hostile, that's the kind of Kashmiri approach to social cohesion. It's not going to produce a happy ending.
Well, I look forward to the appointment of the Russian Orthodox czar, which would at least be interesting. Michael, hasn't the Secretary of State gone into a frightful muddle? That he is attacked on the left from Tahir Ali, on the right from Graham Stringer. He doesn't know what to do, so he comes up with a non-definition definition that isn't going to be legally binding, that is intended to mean as little as possible, but throws a bone to an important electoral constituency for the Labour Party.
I have real problems with all of this. I just don't know what I think. But let me try and get some principles in place. First of all, the problem you have is that certain religious groups are closely linked with certain racial groups. So, I mean, I know you've just said what you have, but 99% of Muslims in this country are of an Asian background. Another principle is that we should all be allowed, anybody should be allowed to attack anybody else's religion and to say that they hate that religion. I should be entitled to say I hate Catholicism, or you might want to say you hate atheism or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is perfectly reasonable within a free society.
You'll come up into the pearly gates if you say you hate Catholicism.
Well, I'm ready for that. But as I don't think the pearly gates existed, I've lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
I suppose my conclusion is, it's probably best to keep things as they are for the time being. We're just getting more and more complicated, more and more regulation, more and more police time, more and more employing lawyers, time in the courts. And actually, I think we find time and again that introducing more laws and regulations is not the answer in many cases, and it diverts from more serious issues.
All right, coming right against myself, frankly, Catholics don't get any hostility in this country. We're fine. Muslims do. Don't they therefore need and deserve an extra level of protection, particularly from the state in its own organs, to try and save them from hassle and sort of accidental discrimination that could take place otherwise?
So I think there's a number of issues here, one of which, of course, is that Islam in this country is currently, some members of it are attacking other members of our country. Only the other month, two Jews are killed in the name of Islam. Manchester Arena bombing, 7/7. Actually, you can't expect people generally to say, oh, well, that's it then, right? They are going to feel worried in the same way as we were anti-Irish when the IRA was blowing us up, in the 80s and the 70s. So I can understand why there is a general feeling of worry about it. Secondly is this. The idea that a government now gets this thing through, he will be I'm presuming it's a man, but could be anybody, the anti-hostility czar will be swamped by, I suspect, Muslims saying X, Y, and Z, and hospitals, local government, councils will be joining in. I can see this being a bureaucratic nightmare, which will then lead, right, to somebody, and I should imagine the Greens, saying this does not go far enough, and then we're on the way to blasphemy. Don't even think about it. This is the beginning of a very, very dangerous road for our country. And nobody seems to mention the fact that the problem is likely to get worse with the manner in which we are bringing in followers of Islam into our country illegally. So there's a whole load of things happening at the same time. And then we have a Labour government who says, we've got to do something. Have you seen Gordon and Denton? Have you seen the result? We have to do something about that. And this is it. So it becomes politicised.
What's
we are
Gordon
done
and Denton
for.
got to do with it?
Well, they've seen the way that the Muslim vote has moved. So the Labour Prime Minister says we can't carry on like this. We're going to lose a load of MPs. So how about throwing them a bone on this issue?
Some Muslims in Gorton and Denton may have moved from Labour to the Greens, but I mean that's true of all groups in society. And to sort of attack a group of people on the grounds of an election result you don't like, and all this bogus stuff about family voting and so on.
But what makes you think they didn't? What makes you think they didn't? Everybody else, every political expert I've seen said, they've all said the Muslims voted almost as one to the Greens in order to give a V sign to Starmer. Starmer says, I can't carry on like this. How have you thought about anti-hostility laws?
But there are often groups in society who vote largely one way or another. Working class people, trade unionists.
Working class people don't vote for any bloc anymore.
Well, not anymore, but they used to. They used to. Or the miners' union in Yorkshire or whatever.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you, Toby, and my panel.